Hey guys, it's me, it's Queen Auset-Heru, and thank you for joining me for another magnificent edition of The Witch Trials. It's good to see you guys. I want to talk about this movie. Oh my god, I gotta tell you guys about this movie. Let's get started. The movie is called Spellbinder, and it came out in 1988. Apparently, it was an independent thriller. I like this movie. I just want to tell you straight up, I like the movie. I really enjoyed it. I like most movies, actually. There's always something about it I like. So let me explain what happened. I'm going to first, on this edition of the Witch Trials, like every edition of the Witch Trials, I'm going to first give you a summary of what happened in the movie. Then I am going to tell you the vices, which is basically what is fake, what is not real witchcraft, what could never possibly happen in most cases. Then I'm going to tell you the virtues, which is what I enjoyed about the film. And then I'm going to give it a rating. Now, just because I like a film doesn't mean it gets a good rating. I've liked many films that got an awful rating. So the rating is based on, is the witchcraft accurate? So it's very possible for me to enjoy it for entertainment, but the witchcraft not be accurate. Okay? So in this case, let me tell you what happened in Spellbinder. Spellbinder was interesting. It was really, really interesting. I really thought it was. Let me explain. So there's a gentleman. He's a lawyer, and he works in this law firm. And his best friend and a couple other colleagues at work all went to play basketball. After they finish playing basketball, they come outside and they're walking through the parking lot. Two of them go to their cars, and the best friend and the lawyer are standing there talking. The lawyer is basically telling him that he's tired of being single. He wants to meet a woman he likes. He hasn't met a woman who really connected with him, that kind of thing. So they're talking about this, and off in the distance, there's a couple arguing, a man and a woman. And he keeps talking to his friend about Palm Springs and wanting something real and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, the man slaps the woman over in the corner. Now, I don't know. This is 1988, So, in a lot of cases, some men wouldn't have even done anything, unfortunately. I think if it was me, I would have called the police. But the two of them run over to break up this man beating up this girl. So, the lawyer and her have some kind of instant attraction. Like, it's instantaneous. And apparently, you don't get the whole story about why this guy hits her. You don't get any story, really. All you get is that she doesn't want to go with the guy. She's scared of him. So they chase the guy off, and they're like, she's not going anywhere with you. And the lawyer says, don't worry, I'll drive her home. So she gets in the car with the lawyer. He goes to drive her home. And he's like, well, you going to tell me where you live, And she was like, I live with that guy. So she has nowhere to go. So he's like, all right, well, you can come to my place, And she's like, well, no, kind of like scared of going to his place. And he's like, I won't do anything to you. I'll sleep on the couch. You can have my room, that kind of thing. So they go back to his place, and basically he proceeds to fall in love with this woman. They're together, she does little witchy stuff, but he doesn't really think much of it. Like when she first met him, when they first got back to the apartment, she's like reading his energy, and she's like, you've never loved anybody, your mom's dead. She like goes through this whole like energy reading, we call it. And he's sitting there like, what? So she does little witchy stuff, but he doesn't think much of it. So he falls in love with her. They're together. He's introducing her to his friends. She throws a dinner party at his house. I mean, it gets hot and heavy fast, okay? And she's staying with them. She's not leaving. She's there every night. So then all of a sudden, this woman appears, and she's like, she's ours and we want her back. and like the guy that slapped her initially appears in his parking lot, and basically they're just like, saying they want her back, she's ours, blah blah blah. So all of a sudden she disappears, and when she disappears he goes to a cop, and the cop takes him, a detective, and he's like, she's in a cult, they're Satanists. He's trying to, basically tell him that this woman is dangerous, and that, they're trying to find her. They think her coven is responsible for murdering people and all this other stuff. So it's very, very interesting. So anyway, to make the summary leap forward, the bottom line is that at the end of the movie, homeboy ends up dead. The lawyer ends up dead. And come to find out, his best friend is the one that set up this whole thing. He was involved in this whole cult and everything, beginning to end. And he ends up dead, and the young girl, her name is Miranda, goes off to do this again. And you're getting ready to see why, from my virtues and vices, why this is happening. I recommend watching this movie because it's really interesting. I didn't know what was going to happen. You kind of know what's going to happen, so I kind of spoiled it for you. But you should never watch The Witch Trials if you want to see the movie. Watch the movie first, then watch The Witch Trials. But let me tell you my vices and my virtues. So that's a summary of what happened. Now, what were the vices? Vice number one, at one point in the movie, the guy who slapped her, sets another man on fire with magic. Apparently this man was in the coven with them, and he left, he ran away. So they went and found him and killed him. They set him on fire with magic, like he just went like this and the guy exploded. And I was watching like, we can't do that. That could never happen. It's interesting to me because this was kind of my tip off, because this happened in the beginning of the movie, and this was my tip off that something wasn't right, because Miranda had ran away from this coven and they didn't come kill her. They just went and threatened her boyfriend. And I'm like, with the other guy, they set him on fire. So something about this wasn't right, and by the end I figured out it's because Miranda was in on this whole thing. Anyway, so setting people on fire with magic, we absolutely cannot do. Then, a little bit later, when the guy came to go threaten the lawyer, he went like this and lifted the guy's car off the ground. His car. With him in it. I was sitting there like, with magic? It was so crazy. He went like this, the car lifted off the ground, and he went like that, and all of the windows burst. They just exploded. And then he he slammed the car back on the ground. And I was sitting there watching it like, if I could lift things that heavy with magic, I probably would never lift anything ever again. Like furniture and all kind of stuff. I was like, we definitely can't do that. But that would be really cool. Number 3, they sacrificed humans in this movie. And I do not know any witches that sacrifice humans. I've heard rumors of different groups sacrificing humans, but I've never actually like been around anybody that would admit something crazy like that. So this does not happen in witchcraft. This might happen, but it's not the typical common thing that happens in witchcraft. I've never been around it. Nobody's ever said to me, hey, let's go sacrifice somebody for the solstice, like this never happened. Now, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, because it might, but I'm just going to say it's not common. Like they're trying to act like all witches sacrifice humans, and that's absolutely not true. I would never sacrifice a human, even if I was like, at gunpoint or something. Like that is, that to me, that feels all kind of wrong. And why would your deity want you to sacrifice a human? The deities love humans. Like the whole thing just sounds wrong to me. Breaking windows with magic. They broke the windows out of his whole apartment. they just kind of like put their hands, they didn't even like do anything to the window. They just put their hands on it, and it was like 10 of them, and then the thing just exploded. And I was sitting there like, yeah, okay. So that was like pretty interesting. And I was like, nah, we can't do that either. And the last one was they sacrificed the lawyer and cut his heart out. And again, like I said, I have heard, online, or I've heard urban legends or rumors about sacrifice, but never in a pagan group. I've never had a group of pagans say something like that to me. So in this movie, they cut out my boy's heart. And I don't know what they did with it, but they cut it out. And I was just sitting there like, this is fiction all day. And again, like I said, I have heard about these kind of things, but when I heard about like cutting out somebody's heart, I heard about that from like the ancients. It was like one of the ancient civilizations, and they cut the heart out and threw the person in the volcano or something. It was one of those kind of things. It wasn't modern pagans or people that were just doing craft. So like I said, that's something that creeps me out. Now, let me tell you the virtues. These are the reasons why I like this movie. That's why this movie got a good rating for me. Because they did a lot of stuff that we actually can do. Or talked about a lot of stuff we could actually do. The first thing was Miranda is the main character, the girl that got slapped in the parking lot. And Miranda did an energy reading, which is basically a psychic reading. And many witches can do energy readings. They can do psychic readings. And Miranda did one to him when she first met him, and she did some of his friends at the party and things like that. Come to find out, Miranda knew all about him before she met him, so she's probably using that knowledge in her reading. But she did do, energy reading. That is an example of what it looks like anyway. Whether or not she was faking is another story. Then she did energy healing, and she did actually do this. I think it could have been Reiki, but there's other forms of energy healing, but it was one of the forms. And she did it with her hands, and she, did something, and then put her hands on his back, and she did, some kind of motions with her hands, and then whatever the pain was, he said, was completely gone. So she definitely did a real energy healing. Then she mentioned the winter solstice, and this is true. Many pagans use the winter solstice, the spring equinox, or one of the holy days as Samhain, which is Halloween. What else do we use? The full moons, those are considered holidays or holy days to some people. New moon. So she did mention the winter solstice, which ties in to all of the other holy days that pagans use to do rituals. The winter solstice is a big one. It's right around Christmas time, and that's a big one. And you usually do something to bring prosperity and things like that to your family. It's all kind of things people use that energy for, but it doesn't have to be anything that's nefarious. It can be usually is for like prosperity or good things to come into your home, or for there to be light, you to be enlightened, things like that. He had a prophetic dream. He had a dream of one of them coming in and stabbing him, which is ultimately what happens at the end. So he did have a prophetic dream, the lawyer, before he was murdered. They did their rituals outside and inside, which is true. Some people do their rituals right in their home. Like my altar is right in my bedroom. My other altar is right over here. So I stand right there and do my rituals and light my candles. But we also do them outside. They did the ritual where they killed him at the beach. And we do rituals at beaches. We do rituals in the woods. Rituals outside actually are better. Not so much the energy is better. I just prefer them. I like being outside in nature, because if you are a priest or a priestess or a witch, you usually work with nature. So I think it's really cool when nature allows, when the weather allows. So I've done rituals in the woods. Sometimes people do nude rituals. They dance around the moon. All kind of stuff happens. But again, these rituals, in this case, they were killing somebody. I've never seen anybody do that. We've done rituals. I'm trying to think. We jumped over this thing. You had to jump over the pot for Beltane. the pot would be on fire and you had to jump over the pot for good luck and prosperity and to burn away evil or burn away negativity. It's symbolic. Witchcraft is all symbolic. And you know, we did that in the woods. Some people, like one time we decorated the tree and danced around the tree, you know. So it's different things, rituals that people do outside, so they're really cool. Prayers, you know, things along those lines. And rituals generally don't require a sacrifice, but you do give an offering of some kind. So if you're out in the woods and you call upon, you know, the huntress to come forward, you would give the huntress a gift. You would give her something that she would like. Usually it's something like food or flowers, you know, something like that. Not a human heart, you know, something along those lines. They took their way out of context. Symbols. You see a lot of pagan symbols in this movie. You saw a couple pagan symbols. You saw some planets, things like that. So you did see some real symbols that pagans actually use. Coven members. You see that there is a coven. This group, you know, they're a coven. We really do have covens. Lots of people, I used to run a coven. Lots of people do have covens. A coven is nothing more than a group of witches that come together, and they might come together online. They might come together in real life, you know, to do these kind of, you know, rituals and ceremonies and things. But like I said, they don't have to be doing something that's nefarious. Most of the time they're not coming together to do a prayer circle, coming together eating cakes and having ale. You know, they do different things together, but not like this coven. She mentioned herbal medicine, which many of us do use herbs and oils and things like that for medicine. That's true. She mentioned casting spells, and she casts a protection spell when the witches start to, you know, come after them. She does cast a protection spell. Read thoughts. Oh, she was mentioning how she could read people's thoughts, and a lot of us can read thoughts. Animal sacrifices. She talked about them doing animal sacrifices, and some pagan groups, not all, some pagan groups are actually vegan or, you know, vegetarian groups. You got all kinds of groups, but there are some. When I was in Africa, I did witness an animal sacrifice, and in this particular you know, family or this particular spiritual system, they believe in whenever you sacrifice, whenever you're going to eat an animal for dinner, you go through this like kind of ritual ceremony kind of thing. I don't think they do it every time, but I think it's at certain times. And it was a ritual. They did kill the animal, and they used every part. It wasn't like they just killed the animal and just let it down on the ground. They killed the animal. They used its blood to, you know, purify the ground. They used its meat for dinner that night. They use the skins to make things out of, you know. So they do animal sacrifice, and then they use all of it in some kind of ritualistic way to honor the animal. So they do that in certain pagan groups, not all of them, of course. Drawing a circle with salt. At one point, she drew a circle around them with salt to protect them, and a lot of people do use salt as protection, either in their magic, in their jars. They might put a circle in the corner of their home. Some people just do it before they do a ritual. They'll just make a circle of salt. People do it in different ways, but a lot of people do use the circle of salt. One thing Miranda said, I loved that Miranda said this, and I wrote this down. She said that most witches are good, and she's right. She said most witches are good, but there are some who choose to abuse their power. And I, for the most part, the real witches that I've met, because everybody that says they're a witch isn't a witch, but the real witches that I've met were generally good. Now, that's not to say that they all are, but the ones I've met were. And she said that. She said most witches are good. And I believe that. I believe that most of us are. And he said, these are not witches. These are Satanists. And I thought that was a very important distinction to make. Witches, and they in the movie, they are Satanists. They got Hail Satan and Satan things everywhere. And there is a difference between witches and Satanists. And the difference is that a Satanist is in the actual Church of Satan. They have a whole, they like, you can Google it. They have a church. They have a church. They have a philosophy. I never sat and read it, to be honest with you. I don't know anything about them, but I did come across it online as I was doing research before. But I didn't read it. I didn't look at it. I just know of it. So Satanists, they do their own thing, but witches and Satanists are two different groups. So they have their own church, they do their own thing, and I can't say anything positive or negative about them because I know nothing. Witches, on the other hand, come in different cultures, and we call ourselves different things. So they're two different schools of thought. You can be a witch and a Satanist, or you can be a witch or a Satanist. You see? You can be both, or you can be one or the other. So I am a priestess of Mayat from the ancient Egyptian system. And a lot of times women and men who are in this kind of spiritual system from our culture, we are called priests and priestesses, and some people use witch. But witch, shaman, priest, priestess, medicine woman, we all do a lot of the same things, but none of us are Satanists. Now, like I said, you could be a witch that decided to be a Satanist, but I don't know anything about them to know what that would look like. You see? So he made that distinction, and I was like, yeah. He said, these are not witches, these are Satanists. And I'm like, yeah, it's a whole different thing. And if you want to know more about that, you'd have to research that yourself. But I do know they have a website because I came across it online. And that was the last one. So this movie had 5 vices, which is not bad. 5 vices is not bad for a fiction film. It had 14 virtues. So I did like this movie. I found it to be very entertaining. I liked the little plot twist at the end too. Miranda, I was mad at her. I was like, Miranda, really? And then, like I said, at the end, she moved on to continue this behavior. And I'm like, Miranda, you know? So I liked the movie. I found it to be entertaining. I liked a lot of things about it that they showed because they were factual. But there were 5 things in it that just, So this movie, I would give a B-, because it's not an awful movie. It's very interesting, and it has a lot of stuff in it that we can do. The stuff that we can't do, the special effects stuff, or the stuff that is not unique to witches, it's less. It's less. You know, it's only 5 of them, so it's less than the 14. But it is what it is. So yeah, I like this movie. I think it's worth watching, and it gets a B-. So it's okay. It's up to my standards. I liked it. But I just wish that they hadn't put in those scenes. But you guys already know that I think that Hollywood puts those scenes in to make it more exciting. Because watching a witch cut up herbs, you know, and roll a candle through them and do some prayers is not really that exciting. You know, I think that that's what all of this is about. I think that the audience is the real reason why you have so many movies that fail. You know, so many movies that fail in that way. I think it's because the audience wants something that's fun. It is what it is, right? All right, guys, time for me to get going and come back soon because I will have another movie to put on trial. See you later. Thank you for being a patron.